this small thing is a fully loaded integrated amplifier for speakers, not for headphones. Is it any good? Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Now, as some of you might have noticed, I'm in a new space, new room, actually new apartment. My voice might be a little bit echoey due to the half-empty room, but other than that, reviews will continue as usual. And today we are talking about SMSL SA-300, which is a stereo integrated amp. And as I said in the intro, it's meant for speakers, not headphones. And I'm emphasizing that because of its incredibly small size. Now, I've just recently reviewed SMSL DA-9. I was really blown away by the quality of that amp. It was based on a similar Class D Infineon modules that come from Germany, produced there. And not unlike that one, SA-300 again uses Infineon modules. It's actually loaded with a digital input too. It has DAC inside. Because of that, you can connect it to your PC or your streamer using USB port. For that purpose, on the back you have micro USB. To be perfectly honest, that's my least favorite USB connector because it's the least sturdy one. But this amp costs $170. That's it. It's integrated amp with 40 watts of power into 8 ohm loads, and I think it doubles to 80 watts into 4 ohms, which is actually a great sign that it doesn't lose its power as load impedance falls. And for 170, you get that decent amount of grunt and amplification. You get digital inputs. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, the other digital input is actually Bluetooth, so you have Bluetooth connectivity too. So even though I would like to see like full-size USB connector, I cannot really complain because of everything you actually get at this price point. Of course, you can also use analog input. Here you can see a pair of RCA connectors, so you can connect your external DAC or CD player or anything like that, and of course binding posts to connect your speakers to. And finally, when it comes to power, it's powered with 24 volts DC. That's basically the way this unit can be this small, because as you can see, power brick is located outside of the amplifier itself. So now I quickly powered it, and for controlling the unit you can use buttons and dial located on the front of the unit, but there is also remote control. It's a typical one that you get with most SMSL products. So I quickly get you through few features before I continue talking about the sound quality. When you power the unit on, it turns on quite quickly, as you can see. Now it's set to line input, which means analog inputs. Even the logo you can see on the display shows RCA cable. It's pretty intuitive, that's quite nice. Here you can choose your input, Bluetooth, USB, or again line input. Those three are available. I would like to see optical inputs because most of the TVs out there have only optical output, and the most simple way to connect them to any sort of DAC or amp is using optical cable, but unfortunately there is no one here. But you know, it's a 170 unit, it has a lot of other things going on for it. You can of course set the volume. The maximum is 60, and most of my listenings were done at around 30 or 30 something. Now, once you enter into the menu, here you can again choose different input, but you can do that quicker, just directly on your remote, so no need to do that here. EQ settings, I listened it mostly in a direct mode because it's the cleanest, neatest, most controlled sounding one. But you can try the other ones. Tone is actually when you manually adjust bass or treble, which you can do here. So if you adjust anything here, the unit will automatically move EQ setting to tone, even if you were in a direct mode before. The other ones, SDB, bass, super bass, you can try them for yourself. And lastly, you can change the color of a display, for example, yellow or any color that you like. I don't know, it's a neat function. And that would basically be all. Integrated amps usually don't have much to tinker with, but just having these EQ presets and being able to set bass and treble is more than most of integrated amps actually offer these days. Now, talking about the sound, bearing in mind that this is a $170 integrated amplifier with digital inputs and with Bluetooth input, I didn't expect anything spectacular, to be perfectly honest. But as usual, SMSL managed to surprise me a little bit. Now I'll start talking about the tonality itself, and for some reason, from a very cheap integrated amp Class D with a lot of features and functions, I expected it to sound lean and thin for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because of its small appearance, actually. But no, it doesn't sound like that at all. If anything, this amp has a slightly warmer sound to it. And first I tested it just using its analog inputs, connected to my usual DAC streamer setup. I changed several DACs in the process, and I realized, wow, this amp actually sounds full-bodied and warm. Bassline is massive, it has weight, it has grunt to it. Mid-bass also, it's on the warmer side, there's a lot of it, but the quality is good too. There's decent amount of control and texture to be heard from the bass notes. Mid-range is again full and quite lush, that's backed up by that present mid-bass. And when it comes to the highest frequencies, they're detailed, airy, open, but I have to say, they're not aggressive. There's just a lot of high frequency details, a lot of air, but it's presented in a quite smooth way. Dynamics are good for this class of amp. Soundstage width also. Nothing sounds congested and like melted. Soundstage developed pretty nicely. And the more I listened to it, I realized, while it's not mind-blowing after everything I've heard, it actually sounds very, very decent, more than decent. It doesn't have any obvious shortcomings, and anything that catches my ear in a negative way, which is a great achievement for an amp costing below $200. And at that moment, I started comparing it to other amps. And the closest one that I've listened to recently is actually NAD D-3020 V2. Now, if some of you have seen that review, I mentioned that that NAD sounds very full, very lush, but also it has a lot of texture and reveals a lot of details. It's on the warmer side because of that emphasized bass and mid-bass grunt, but it shows a lot of details when it comes to higher frequency textures. And the exact same goes for this SMSL amp. It's a warmer sounding amp with a lot of details and textures, but never aggressive. It's actually on the lusher side of things. For example, if I compare it to Yamaha WXA-50 that I really liked, and that's like more than 2 times the price of this one, Yamaha develops bigger soundstage, it's more revealing in general, and it's more analytical sounding. Bass is tidier, it's snappier, but this one resembles to NAD house sound. Also compared to SMSL's own DA-9, I have to say DA-9 is a better amp overall. It sounds quicker, snappier, it's more dynamic, it can create deeper soundstage, it pinpoints things better. So if you only need an amp, you don't need its digital section, because DA-9 is amplifier only, it doesn't have USB input. I would definitely go for DA-9. It's just a superb amp that can easily compete with amps of like 2 and 3 times the price. And also with that one, with DA9, you can hook up speakers up to like $1,000 and it wouldn't feel out of place. It's just an insanely good amplifier. Okay, back to SA-300. What this is actually a very, very affordable all-in-one solution that doesn't sound as good as DA9, but on its own, it sounds very good. As I mentioned, I feel that it can fully compete with NAD D-3020 V2, and it's just a great bargain. It's a great bang for the buck. Oh, and finally, before I forget, I of course tried its integrated DAC too. I connected my streamer through USB connection to this amp, and the sound is also pretty good that way too. Now, compared to some of my best dedicated DACs, the bass was not as authoritative. It was not as punchy. The sound was a little bit mid-range centric, but it kept a lot of warmth and a lot of initial character of this amp. Sure, I did lose a little bit of high-frequency details, a little bit of air, and as I mentioned, some of that bass authority and bass grunt when moving from some of better external DACs to its internal one, but the sound overall was still pretty pleasing to my ears. And I was pretty pleased that the sound didn't become thin and lean or anything like that. I can just say that both analog and digital inputs in this amp are very useful. It feels like a well-rounded package in that sense too, in sense of connectivity. Each input is very well done and very useful. And finally, if we are talking about what kind of speakers would you pair this amp with, I don't feel that it's very choosy. As I said, it has warmer tonality to it, but that really works well with a wide variety of speakers. For example, if you pair this with monitor audio, like Bronze series or Silver series would be a little bit more expensive than I would recommend for this amp, so let's keep it at Bronze. Those are slightly leaner, more mid-range and high-frequency centric speakers. This amp would go great with monitor audio Bronze, in my opinion. If you pair it, for example, with something like Wharfedale's, you would actually get doubling of that warmth factor, because Wharfedale's are usually warm and lush sounding when it comes to the mid-bass and mid-range, but I still feel that works okay with this amp. You just have to be the type of person that actually like the sound to be that way, warmer and lusher. Anything neutral also works well, anything analytical too, because the amp itself is not too analytical. Even when connected to my CAF LS50s that are difficult to load with just 85 decibels sensitivity, it still felt like this little amp had enough of power and enough of grunt. It couldn't really control the bass line as well as some better and pricier amps, for example DA9, but still it produced pretty good results, pretty listenable sound was coming out of these. Okay, but I really digressed here. SA-300 is not meant to drive 5 times pricier speakers that are difficult to load. It is actually meant to be a pretty good budget integrated amplifier, and in that it succeeded completely. I have no problem recommending this to any of my friends that are starting in this hobby. For example, if somebody wants to purchase a $200 or $300 speakers, something along the lines of Monitor Audio Bronze or Wharfedale Diamonds, this little amp is a pretty decent all-in-one solution. You get quite powerful amplification, you get pretty decent DA conversion, and you're ready to go. Just any sort of PC or small streamer, this amp, a set of decent speakers, and wow, pretty decent sound is coming out of that setup. It's incredible when you actually look at this small thing sitting there on the shelf and you're thinking, like, I've seen headphone amps bigger than this, but the sound that's coming from speakers is actually full and powerful and even lush and warm and not in any way weak or lean or lacking in any noticeable way. And that would basically be it. Nothing else to add. As usual, SMSL produced something that's great value and it's great budget product without any significant shortcomings. So if you are in a search for something like this, it really has my full recommendation. It's a great small device. And that would be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, click that button, share, subscribe, etc., etc. See you next time. Bye.